Ready? We call the meeting to order, Lisa?
As required by the Open Public Meetings Act nineteen seventy-five, adequate notice of this meeting was provided on Thursday, April 11th, 2024. I'm sorry, I'm reading another thing. This was last Thursday, let me get into the record. Thursday, April 4th, 2024. Mayor Barsney?
Here.
Mr. Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Bean?
Here.
Mr. Pena?
Here.
Mrs. McDermott? Here.
Please rise.
Mr. Weaver?
Here.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, ready to go, I guess. Kendra, are you ready to talk?
I'm ready to talk and whatever you want me to talk about.
Okay. Well, I guess we're going to talk about the redevelopment plan for the area of need redevelopment.
Okay, sure. So, as you may or may not remember, you all designated certain properties along the highway as area needs of redevelopment. That's the first part of the process in the what I would call the redevelopment process, planning process. The next step would be, and that was back in, I want to say 2022, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. The next part of the process, it would be to adopt a redevelopment plan. And essentially a redevelopment plan is an ordinance. It has a bit more than what you would normally see as your ordinances. But it basically lays out permitted uses, your bulk requirements, what do you require from a design perspective. You can do that in one and two ways. You can do it on a parcel by parcel basis. So somebody comes to you and says, I want to redevelop one of these parcels, and you can work with them to come up with a concept plan and an ordinance that you are coordinating with and negotiating. You could also do kind of more of a broad-based overall plan for the parcels in the area need a redevelopment study area that were found to be in need of redevelopment, and do a broad brush to say, we'd like to see this comprehensively planned. Here are some guidance, bulk requirements and permitted uses. And with the hope that you would maybe be bringing people in, giving them some incentives to develop there. I would say most of the time, we typically see a redevelopment project come from a specific developer, and then you work with that developer on that parcel. That would be normally done on a larger parcel. This area, which you all are familiar with, and I see a site plan up there for one piece of it, it has a couple of smaller parcels. It probably would make sense that you would develop an overall redevelopment plan for all the parcels and how would they be comprehensively developed, but that's not always the case. So that's technically how that would be the next step in putting together a redevelopment plan. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about that.
Well, we already have one applicant for that area, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wendy's?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and now they're coming in just under the zoning, they're asking for a variance.
Yeah.
In order to get approval.
So
for
we
that.
could have streamlined that if we had them come here first. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, technically, listen, if I'm a developer and I own a piece of property and I know it's in an area need a redevelopment, that's the best case scenario, because I can work with you as a government
Right.
body to make it a permitted use. It's a clean and easy process versus the potential risk of not getting the variance that they'd be requesting. But yes, they could have
But
done that route.
every parcel on West Boulevard is already kind of like in the process. correct?
Well, in theory, yes. I mean, the final Cassis piece hasn't been. The agreement hasn't been done yet, but
But they've approached us on other issues, so I'm
Correct.
assuming they're gonna come back on every parcel.
right.
So I think what we have to do is come up with a plan for where the motel is and from
Motel,
New Brunswick
right,
Avenue
right.
down to
right,
Applebee's.
and I guess one of our faux pas, Kendra, was. Even though in the B2, you can put a restaurant in, but for it to have a drive-through, it had to be in a shopping center.
Right.
Which had we have. Done this and put a Wendy or set a restaurant with a drive-through, it would have been a whole lot less hoops for them, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah,
For sure.
it would be a permitted use, they wouldn't have to
Right.
ask for the D
So
variance.
even though these spaces are limited, I still think we need to list that as a permitted use.
A restaurant.
this time around with a drive-through if need be. I'd hate to see another,
Yeah, you mean up there, somebody wanted.
somebody wanted to put, you know, whether they buy the motel and put, you know, 4 of them in there, or it's where the card reader is.
Right,
I hate to see them jump through the hoops that just had to be jumped.
So from a dollars and cents perspective, any developer that's interested in developing parcels within the redeveloped area, the parcels that have been found as an area in need of redevelopment, they can put up escrow for me to put together the redevelopment plan for that property. So you as a governing body don't necessarily have to pay for that. So if you are having developers that are interested in these parcels, have them put up an escrow, and then we can start walking through what the plans look like for each of those parcels. So that helps a little bit with the planning process.
So we should keep it individual for what's left,
Yeah, I think so. Especially if you have people interested in parcels at this point.
and if it's not a permitted use, tell them
Let's
we'll go through this process and make it permitted.
Correct.
Okay, alright, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, because otherwise you're kind of trying to guess as to what they want to do.
Right.
If they have conceptual plans, they put money into doing their due diligence on these properties, it makes most sense to deal with them individually. That being said, I also want to keep in mind that we also want to make sure that we look at it comprehensively too. So, you know, we aren't creating, maybe we can create 1 access to the highway versus 2 and 3 accesses to the highway. Maybe there's a coordination of the properties. That's just an example of being able to look at it comprehensively. So what do you have now in front of you as far as like number of properties that people are looking at? A couple in this area?
Well, actually,
there's 3 basically, right? You know, Walmart Trade, the gas station, the antique,
and the antique, right, you know,
and the lot that, the one just purchased.
that just purchased from the town, correct? So,
That's 4. And it's, well, we'll just say Shammy Shine, and they're working with us on what they wanna do.
right, they're not altering
I
their
don't know if
plan,
it's the right corporation, they got a couple corporations.
right, they're not.
So they are doing what you're suggesting we had them do, they're coming in with proposals on what they would like to do.
Yeah,
I don't think we even know if the hotel's interested in selling or doing anything. They just remodeled and stuff, so they
oh,
may,
did they? Yeah,
and, farther down the one business, I think they're very interested in selling.
They've been looking for, right,
We've been open to them for proposals, and actually they did have one with a car wash, and then the car wash stopped talking to us. And to them, I guess.
right,
gotcha. But yeah, I
well,
mean,
I think they needed so much relief.
Right.
At the time, it wasn't really an option, it was I think, before.
Yeah.
yeah,
the area.
if they're a parcel that's been found as an area in need of redevelopment, they can go through this coordination process with you as the governing body. And again, if I'm the developer, the attractiveness of that is it's a much smoother process. It's a coordination. You basically create an ordinance for the proposal, as long as you all are okay with it. And then you would adopt it. Planning board does what's called a consistency review, and then it's a second reading, and you adopt it at that point.
So my question is, we adopted this ordinance back, you said, in 2022,
It was an area in need of
Yeah.
redevelopment study. It wasn't an
but it
ordinance.
seems like nothing was done, so none of us up here are experts on the next step. So who dropped the ball and said, hey, guys, let's start the next step? Was it you that should have said to us, or?
Well, I did send out a letter last year, I think, indicating what the next step is. And actually, the area needs study talks about all the steps in the redevelopment planning process. Normally, the impetus for moving forward is a developer. You know, that's typically the way that things get moving, or there's a requirement that, you know, you provide for affordable housing in there or something like that, but that wasn't the case here.
Right.
So yeah, it's normally through a developer that's interested in the properties. Once the properties are deemed an area in need of redevelopment, people start becoming very drawn to those properties because they know that there's an advantage that their property has versus other properties that aren't.
And just because it's an area in need of redevelopment, does that affect the tax rate? You know?
No.
Nothing, okay.
No.
All right, that's
No,
all.
it used to be in the previous law considered blighted. But that's not necessarily the case any longer. It's not a blighted property. Your tax assessment stays as is, it doesn't change. It's all based upon the value of the building and the value of the land.
So with that being said, Kendra, and only because there's pictures here. The dispensary, which is a retail operation, it's kind of a permitted use, plus we made it a permitted use. What should we do to make it easier for that building and such, because you can see the footprint is already outside of the triangle of the property.
Right.
What can we do as a TC to make that work?
So outside the redevelopment process, you own West Avenue and then whatever that small right of way is that creates the triangle. I mean, that's something that you as the TC can give that property or sell that property to them to make that property so that they're not building off-site. Right now, they wouldn't be permitted to do that in a right of way area.
Right.
So you could probably, without doing the redevelopment planning process, sell that right of way area to them. Now, if, for instance, they have lots of variances that are associated with it, even with getting that additional right of way, that's where you creating a separate redevelopment plan for that would reduce any variances that they would need. Provided, again, this is all with the idea that you are comfortable with the layout. And that's key to this, but you would create a plan that would allow for this concept plan or a variation of it.
So we could create a plan for them in cooperation with them. That we could potentially, because this area is in need, this could get eliminated.
Yeah.
So that they only, these parking that they have, but we're not gonna require, for every seat, there's.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So we could get rid of that ourselves if they came in to talk to us at the TC level.
Correct.
Not the land use board level
You got it.
first.
Yep.
Or vice versa, we could give them access to that right away.
You could give them access to the right of way. It really just depends upon what other variances, do they need parking, do they need setbacks, do
Right.
they need whatever they need? And if that's the case, it is a cleaner process if you were to create the plan for them. Create the ordinance for them, and then they would come to the land use board. And for the developer of a property like this, there again is less risk because they know what they're putting in is gonna be permitted and it's a by right plan that would go through the planning board process quickly.
Well, sounds like I'm okay with having developers come to us, huh?
Yeah, I.
Mike, you think that's?
Yeah,
What do you
I
think's
think
cleaner?
to get back to Kendra's point is normally every other town I'm in, the developers drive it, right? You know, in a perfect world, the planner's sitting there one day and says, you know what, Township Committee, you should consider this. But the way it normally works is developer comes in, either owns the property, wants to buy the property and says, hey, would you consider declare, and then you pass the resolution, it goes down to the land use board, they do their investigation, planner writes a report and says it meets any of the, so rather than say somebody's like to Mr. Canyon's point, it's since it's usually developer driven, it's not normal that you would create an area in need of redevelopment and then the developers don't come here and go, oh, I'd like to do this, this, and this, and then they kind of negotiate, so it's different than anyone I've been involved with before, just because normally that they all want that, and the reason they want that too is usually because they want a pilot
Right.
at the end, which is the payment in lieu of taxes, where the town gets 95 cents on the dollar and you gotta give the county 5%. And the school board complains about it, but I don't wanna get too far down the rabbit hole, but the school board argument, not in this town, but in other towns, is weak because the school board sets their budget and hands the bill to the town and the town collects the money and gives it to them. So whether you guys give out a pilot or not, doesn't impact them one iota. Now, if you gave a pilot on residential development, then it gets a little sticky because they say, well, you're putting kids in the school system, but which is true, but remember, they set their budget and you guys get the bill and then, you collect their money for them. So, if I think if the committee said, you know what, we'd like to see X, Y, and Z there. So Kendra, could you draft something up
Right.
that would encourage that? But developers by and large know what's gonna work on a certain site. So I think it's better if they come to us and say, we would like to build this, and if it's a good idea, and you guys think it'll be good for the town, then you go, yeah, that's a great idea.
Right.
Rather than we're trying to guess, and the market changes. Now the big thing is, of course, warehouses that nobody wants and apartments that nobody wants.
Yeah.
But that seems to be what people are building in other areas, like the commercial district, it's different. But I would say, wait till the developers come to you, because otherwise we could spend a lot of time spinning our wheels, and then they come back and need something completely different for a plan that you guys think is great and is a great thing for the town. So,
And this is such a small area, the number of lots that were found, that, there's maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 of them, that it's not an entire corridor that you're planning for. So I think you could plan individually as interested parties come to you, whether developers and or landowners. I just think sometimes when you have such small pieces, that you may not have as sophisticated developers coming in to actually even know what it meant to be in an area in need of redevelopment and what the benefits were, including a pilot.
Wendy supplied after we made this area any redevelopment, correct?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Why didn't, like, land use boards advise them it's an area in need of redevelopment and kick them up to us?
So actually, it's in our letter. And it's gonna be a discussion item tonight as to, you are in an area in need of redevelopment and you have the opportunity to work with the governing body, and that, but every developer has their own ability to do what they wanna do, and I think.
Well, I mean, I get it, they have a responsibility to figure that out on their own, but I mean, we are looking to develop that area. And I don't know why, maybe what they weren't told, you might wanna go to the township first. before you come here.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't know how that mechanism would work or why, but-
Well, they're far enough into the process now that
Yeah.
they don't need to come to us at this point.
No, they will most likely go forward with and ask for a vote tonight,
I would think so, yeah, I would have thought so, yeah.
so they'll, and,
They jumped through the hoops we made them jump through.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. I think that in this situation, this is somewhat new to the municipality. So whoever's the gatekeeper as they submit their plans, they didn't necessarily.
Oh, yeah, I'm not I'm not
Catch it.
trying to blame anyone, I'm just saying that. I guess that's where I'm headed, is like, do we need to implement something that in that area, anybody comes forward, they should be referred to us? case they
Yeah,
come in
there's
with
an
a
ability to do that if in the process of accepting applications, or whoever gets the phone calls, from the developer in that area. As the first entry into the town, it would be good to give them the lay of the land.
And I'll just say to put a finer point on it, my firm does development work, so if I was doing like the Wendy's, by the time you do the ordinance, right, and the redevelopment plan and everything else, if you think you're gonna get a warm welcome at the board, it's quicker to just go, you know what I mean? That process is quicker. I think the redevelopment process, when you have, 400 unit apartments and then you're building commercial, it's a mixed use thing, and it's just gonna be, it could end up being a battle. It's just better to get as much as you can ironed out in the in the redevelopment plan stage. And then also they're ultimately looking for the pilot. Here, I don't think, like Kendra said, on the smaller developments, the pilot doesn't mean as much to them. I'm sure they wouldn't mind having one, but
Right.
and then, with the pilot, it always comes down to, they're supposed to prove that they couldn't otherwise build the project and that it's beneficial to the town. So that'd be a stretch with, a fast food restaurant or something like that, I'm not saying they couldn't do it, but I'm just saying that, usually these things are affected, bigger projects are more interested in it. So, I mean, I think that's probably the calculus as well.
Frosties aren't any benefit to the town.
Now, I wouldn't say that, Mayor, but I would say, a good example too is our other piece of property in the redevelopment zone where their attorney came in looking for a zoning permit. And it's like, we tried to explain to them like on 7 different occasions that this is a real advantage to you, to use this process. And it's like, you can lead a horse to
And
water,
they
but
can't, and they still
yeah.
haven't, yeah.
anyway, that's 2 cents.
Okay. Anything else on that one? Okay. The other reason we were here here, we're going to just at least discuss and start a discussion on whether amending any of our laws to allow cannabis cultivation licenses. You know much about that, Frank? That's why we invited you.
Yeah, I do. I have, had a client that I was working with and I studied a lot of the Cannabis Regulatory Commission rules and procedures and met with the head of it. I do have a non-disclosure agreement, so I have to be careful what I can say at a public meeting about his concept. But, I can tell you a lot of what I learned along the way. Cultivation comes under there's a multitude of different classes of licenses for cannabis. And one of those being cultivation. And then in each of the 6 classes of licenses, there's also something called the micro business license. And their focus is completely different. When you're talking about cultivation, right now, the MSOs, the multi-state operators, dominate the New Jersey market. And they're all doing inside grow. They'll take an old Walmart, they'll take an old warehouse and rehab it and do 100,000 square feet of grow inside, a very intense indoor grow. That the micro business license, you're limited to 2,500 square feet of production area. The other thing that's very interesting about the micro business license is the holder of the license has to be a resident of the municipality in which the license is used or a contiguous municipality. So if you were doing the micro business license concept, which is a much smaller footprint than a traditional class 1 license, it has to be a local resident that's the investor in the property. So it's a small business. During my time researching all of this, it became clear that one cultivation facility is not economically viable. So you could group several licenses on the same property and essentially have, and in this case, we're talking about greenhouse growing. It's not outdoor grow, it's not indoor grow, it's greenhouse grow. And the concept being that you're growing in the soil and you're producing a local product. You could have 5 separate license holders adjoining one another on one piece of property, about an acre of footprint altogether as far as like a site, and have them managed by a management service company. So you have another company with expertise in all of the business of cannabis manage it. That person could be anybody. It doesn't have to be a local resident. So that's a one basic approach to doing this. Now, a couple other things to keep in mind, the State Agriculture Development Committee, the Farm Preservation Program, they've already ruled on this, that it's an acceptable permitted use on a preserved farm. So you can do it on a preserved farm. There's language in the CRC's rules about taxation and farm assessment. Essentially, and I have the letter from the New Jersey Board of Taxation or Taxation Division. Only the footprint, let's say at 100-acre farm, and 98 acres are receiving farmland tax assessment. The house is taxed farm regular. That's not receiving farm assessment. The same would apply to the envelope where the cannabis cultivation was going. So they would pay regular land taxes on that little footprint, but the remainder of the farm would still receive farmland taxes. Now, the reason a municipality would be interested in this is the 2% sales tax. So the gross sales out of any kind of cannabis use, and I'm sure you've seen this, with the dispensary, 2% of that sales tax will generate directly to the municipality. There's no restrictions on how you use those funds. You can use it for whatever municipal purpose is. It doesn't have to be for open space. There's no restriction on how you use those dollars. It just goes to the general fund. So it's hard to know exactly what the revenue would be out of each one of these greenhouses. I did some estimates a couple of years ago, but it's probably in the neighborhood of about $250,000 per year in sales revenue out of one of those 5 greenhouse operations. And as you know, if you went and tried to put this into ordinance language, you have the control over the size of the property, the setbacks that would be required from, adjoining residential uses, the screenings of it. But essentially, it's gonna look like a greenhouse, but what's grown in it is not, tulips or orchids,
Yeah.
it's gonna be cannabis. So that's pretty much in a nutshell, I would say, what my overview would be, and happy to answer any questions.
Well, based on your research, and I understand all that you were just talking about, if greenhouses were in and around here, I know one of the arguments that we're going to battle is the odor.
Yeah.
What have you found in your research?
Yeah, that is by far the issue, is the odor that comes out of the greenhouses. And a lot of it is really dependent on the local conditions. Wooton Township has a major greenhouse operation that's growing cannabis in their town, and they've had this ongoing issue. Now, they finally have developed some filtration systems to control the odors before it's released out of the grow house. So there are ways to do that, and I think it was Reddington Township had the Walmart that got converted. Right, there was a major issue there, but they were able to come up with a filtration system to mitigate it. So there are now ways to address that matter, but I still think you need a proper setback. I don't know what that is as far as distance from residences, but there definitely should be some, hundreds of feet of distance.
Right, well, I was gonna say, in your experience, what are the hundreds of feet?
Well, I haven't, with my client, we never got to the point of getting approval for a facility. But just, so the only comparables are a grow facility in Wooton Township and, the massive indoor grows that the MSOs are doing. Greenhouse operation, it's a much smaller volume of plants. It's a maximum of 1,000 plants per month are permitted in the greenhouse. So it's not nearly the concentration that you would have in the typical indoor grow. So the odors shouldn't be as intense. But stuff stinks. It's just,
What creates the odor? Is it-
it's whatever the chemicals are in the plant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's, it's just the natural smell of
Right,
it.
which is why law enforcement, they'll just walk up and you roll your window down if you've been partaking. And
Yeah,
there's no
that
way
part
to
I
mask.
It must be the tetrahydrocannabinol, I would assume.
Yeah, it's those oils that are in the plant.
Right,
And is that 2,500 square feet individual greenhouses?
Yes.
So they're not together in one big greenhouse, they're
Correct, they
individual
could be literally,
next to each other.
connected with doors that open. And that we vetted through the CRC. And they didn't have an issue with that concept. So, it's definitely a viable concept. And what I think is pretty neat is the requirement that it has to be local residents that own the license. So it's not the multi-state operators. So the other aspect of this is a concept I came up with along the way, which is using the area in need of redevelopment concept for doing this in inner cities, where you could just take an old warehouse, literally chop the roof off and put in a glass roof. And then the city would control the redevelopment of that and could control the issuance of the licenses to either individuals or nonprofits that were involved with recidivism or socially disadvantaged individuals to, address the original reason for a lot of this going public. So anyway, just throwing that out there
Does the
there's
smell-
another idea.
Or, is the smell all the time or is it only when they're doing the cuttings? Like how many, I think they get like 4 or 5,
I think it's all the time.
all the time.
Yeah, but yeah, you would get like 3 to 4
Yeah.
cuttings or harvests.
Harvest, yeah,
harvest,
4 or 5
each
harvests a
year.
What I always heard, but. I've heard people equate it to doing the harvesting, like what we get around here now with chicken manure in the spring. You
Yeah.
get a couple of days of bad odor.
Yeah,
And they said doing harvesting, they don't know of any way to really prevent that if you're gonna get some smell.
right.
So,
Now, if,
uh,
I don't know of any around here, but there's, I think about 100 hemp licenses that have been issued by the Department of Agriculture. It is the exact same odor profile, outdoor hemp growing as cannabis. So if there was a sample you could point to, And you could kind of test the odor profile that way.
Yeah.
How much is one of those licenses for the individual
They're cheap.
greenhouses?
They're cheap, they're only a few $1,000s.
A few thousand?
Yeah, they're not, they're designed to be approachable.
Huh.
Right now, under the micro business license, there's only been like 2 statewide cultivation licenses issued. There's been other micro business licenses issued for dispensaries. So it's, very small. Highbridge has a micro business dispensary.
You know the time frame from start to when you get your license? Because I was shocked with the retail, it's like 18 months to 24 months.
Yeah, I don't know for sure.
Right, about the same paragraph.
Yeah.
The same hoops.
They've gotten, there's a lot of applications the CRC's getting.
Yeah,
So I think one of the major issues is just their staff capacity. So they have prioritized the micro business licenses though.
because it's local.
Yes, exactly.
Does it depreciate the homeowners' residential homes that would be around it? Would that be a deterrent for people?
It's really hard to say. I think if a neighbor was objecting, they would make that claim. I don't know how you prove that though.
Well,
How far does the smell travel?
that's.
It's a good question, and that's
the
really,
question.
it really depends on the local conditions.
Yeah.
I think if you're in a higher wind area, it's gonna dissipate more than if it's in a hollow and the air isn't circulating often, then it's gonna concentrate. That's the issue that Boonton Township had. It's in the kind of like a hollow in a valley. And all of that air kind of just sat below the cloud level.
Did they get anything to correct that one though?
They did. They
And
did
Bennington
correct.
corrected theirs too for the other.
Yeah. Right. So
Now,
so
correction, is that a total elimination or is it, what's a correction?
it sounds like it's a manageable situation.
Yeah.
It's what I hear in Boonton, there's still a couple of houses that are just inundated with it, no matter what they do,
Yeah.
just where they're located and the way the wind blows. But that in that case, the houses are right there, right next to the farm,
Oh, yeah.
so if you have the opportunity to plant it, you could say minimum farm size of X
Right.
acres. And then, all of your normal zoning, bulk requirements of setbacks and all.
So I talked to an individual about 2 hours ago. And said that we were meeting to discuss this, and he does have a piece of property in town that's not near any residents. But he was concerned, what about security and, so what are the requirements?
You're required to have a security plan and have it in place. It's essentially, cameras to monitor and security fencing. So it's gonna be, we think, that you could do something that would look like deer fencing around the greenhouse operation. But it's gonna have to be, monitored with cameras. And, someone's gonna have to be, security on duty, not necessarily, on site, but called when something's triggered. So there's definitely those.
Now, are there firms out there that, like, let's say this landowner will lease the land
Right.
to, a company. Are there companies out there that will come in and say, okay, you got township approval, I wanna lease 3 acres to you, whatever.
Yeah.
Are there companies out there that?
Yes, there are. And that, the whole issue is getting local approval.
That's what this individual said. And he
That's
did
totally
mention-
where it's at.
He did mention an individual in Boonton.
Yeah,
This is a young kid too, so,
yeah, but that's a multi-state operator. They
right,
came
that's what he
in-
said.
Yeah, they came in
Yeah.
under the medical, medical cannabis laws, established themselves, and then they, when recreational came open, they expanded into that. So yeah, I wasn't gonna take my client's call, but when he started to describe what he was doing, I was like, that's interesting, because it's now focused on agriculture. So that's his whole concept of he's trying to do a vertically integrated operation from his dispensary, all, through the cultivation, the manufacturing, the transportation, and the dispensing. And if you're able to do that, each step of the way, there's a 2% sales tax that's going to the host municipality for each one of those steps.
Mhm.
If you can control that whole process, then there's no there's no transactions that are happening, and you can control your costs better.
Hmm.
So, and that's what makes it more of a doable thing. But apparently there's also like a terroir to terroir, like wine has a terroir, meaning the flavors are the ground imparts the flavor to the grape, and you taste it in the wine. The same
Right.
thing with cannabis, apparently.
Right.
I didn't know that. I've never,
Kind of like with.
I honestly, I've never
Yeah,
partaken.
you want local.
Okay, Brooklyn.
But the reason I'm interested in talking about tonight really is this will go around town to see what the reception of the
Right.
people are first.
I think that's what you gotta do,
Yeah,
is
I
just
mean,
get the word out there that's being discussed.
I'm all for medical marijuana. I'm fundamentally really against marijuana, just from my background, my profession and stuff, but I don't speak for me, I speak for the township. So if people really wanted it, I'm not like totally against it or something. I mean, I always consider marijuana as a gateway drug. People will argue that, but you talk to addicts, 9 out of 10 addicts will say they started with marijuana. Now, everybody who smokes marijuana obviously doesn't become an addict, but I do have some, fundamentally, I'm not exactly all on board 100% with this personally. But the township does have some revenue issues. It's things, it's something that I've heard people talk about that they wouldn't mind seeing. So I'm looking tonight, just hoping people watch this and start talking, saying
Right.
two things. Did you hear what they're gonna do? It's great, or did you hear what those crazy people want to do?
Yeah.
So.
But there, while you say it's a gateway drug, there's also evidence that if cannabis can be used for folks that have higher addictions, you know, and
Right,
and
that would be
helping them with
medicinal.
their
I have no
addictions.
problem with that.
So,
But,
and I'll say this from my wife's personal experience, but having had back fusion surgery, and she's dealing with nerve pain down her leg.
Yeah.
The
I
gummies
spoke to
help her
people with
sleep.
With cancer, they
Yeah.
said it helped, was the only thing that helped with the pain and stuff. I have no problem with it for that. But for the general
Helps
market,
her sleep.
I'm just not sold on it yet for the general market, me. But I do things up here based on what I think is best for a town and what most of the people in town would want, not what I
Right.
want, so. I'm not saying I would never vote for it, but
Right.
it's a strange discussion for me, I guess is the way to say it. Anybody else? Anybody have anything else they wanna bring up, even though that's different? Not on the agenda.
Lisa, the appraisal, did you get an opportunity to talk to the appraiser that our assessor? For the,
I think I had kicked it back to you or to John to find out if that was also a conflict,
okay,
just because they're also aren't technically employed by us, and I don't think did that go to you or
Do
John?
you wanna go in an executive?
Yeah.
We should do that, right? You know, on the agenda?
Yeah, cause
You did other
Yeah.
matters, right?
I never have a problem when something comes up that's you know, the
Yeah.
only time you get in trouble is if somebody.
Okay, well then I'll move up, I'll make a motion to open public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone wishing to come up to the podium, ask any questions, anyone make any statements or whatever, comment? Seeing none, I make a motion, we close public comment,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'll make a motion, we go into executive session,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Which shouldn't be that long if you want, if you're waiting, to, you know, I only gave you public comment. I'll make a motion to come out of executive session,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mike?
Yes, ma'am, we emerged from executive session at 7:03 PM where we discussed two attorney-client privilege matters. One dealing with a potential purchase of property and the other was a potential conflict issue. No official action was taken. Copies of these minutes will be available at such time as the committee determines there is no harm to the public interest.
Okay, anybody have anything else? Looking for a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
See you next Thursday night.
Probably just ask Lisa for like that. Are we next Thursday, are we doing